Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight, specifically Side by Side Forever, the new Tome story from Tome 11 starring Charlotte and Victor DeHaye, better known as the Twins. I just want to get ahead of the comments here and confirm before I go on, yes, I am absolutely very biased in favour of this story. Completely, there's no disputing that. So bear that in mind when I say that Side by Side Forever might be the best Tome story Behaviour has ever written. I know I've said this before with other tomes, and I'd say it competes with the Tome stories for Plague, Billy, Tap, David's second tome, and maybe Tricksters for the top spot in terms of truly exceptional Tome stories. But I think Twins might have them all beaten for a very simple reason. The Twins tome is clever. And that isn't something I use to refer to DBD lore very often, but it really is because of how the writer uses their understanding of the characters to expand on what we already know, while making us rethink elements of their story in new ways. A lot of DBD's best stories do this, like the Plague story introducing her father figure Haban to flesh out her youth as a temple acolyte, or David's story using his independence from his parents in the first tome to explore how he acts free from their influence in his second. But most of these function like zoom-ins on the character, a highlight of their life that shows us an event that changes them as a person that usually didn't exist before. Because most characters in Dead by Daylight have pretty Spartan base stories that frequently leave gaps to be explored. The Twins are not most characters. Their backstory is incredibly exhaustive. 1,274 words makes it the second longest killer backstory in the game. But unlike Carmina's story, it doesn't waste a single one. Every major twist and turn in Charlotte and Victor's short lives is documented from their birth to their abduction by the entity. So when I heard a tome was coming, as much as I was boiling over with hype, I didn't really know what to expect, because what could it really cover that we didn't already know? The writer of Side by Side Forever seemed to grasp that and decided to do things a little bit differently this time. Instead of making a new event in Charlotte's life to tell a story of, they decided to go for a more slice-of-lifey approach to show us what her day-to-day life looks like. I'll admit this isn't an entirely new concept for Tome stories. Ace and Huntress, for example, both have stories that are relatively uneventful in the wider schemes of their characters, but stories like this have basically always flopped for a couple of reasons. The biggest one of those reasons by far is the fact that these stories really struggle to capture the relationships that character has with people around them. When the story covers a particular event in a character's life, like the hillbilly breaking out of his room or David coming to terms with his sexuality, it's a great time to develop the character's relationships in high-stress situations when those relationships are tested and you find out who your friends really are. But the Twins handle it a little differently. Because while most other backstories take place during traumatic events in their lives that disturb them and set them on a different path, Charlotte and Victor's entire lives are one giant sequence of traumatic events, painstakingly documented throughout their story. Adding another one to the laundry list wouldn't accomplish anything, so I'm really happy they didn't do it this time around. And while most Tome stories function by exploring a relationship between the main character and a side character, the Twins got to cheat the formula again. Because they didn't need a side character to create a relationship worth exploring. They're two people. Two incredibly close people in an incredibly intimate and tender relationship that's got far more weight than any relationship they could have with a side character invented for the purposes of the story. Charlotte and Victor are the dream team. As conjoined twins, they go everywhere together and share everything with each other. From the day they were born to the day the entity gave Victor life and separated him from Charlotte. Of course their relationship was central to this story. It's central to their everything. And for a pair of characters so inextricably linked to one another, the most interesting question you could ask is, how does one live without the other? That's a question that Side by Side Forever decides to try and answer, and it does so in the most bittersweet and emotionally intelligent way possible, by sampling a day in the life of Charlotte's most lonely period. The time between Victor's demise in the Black Veil Sanctum and his resurrection, when Charlotte was on the run during her adolescence and growth into a young woman. Of all the parts of Charlotte's life, this is the one given the least clarity by their base lore. She takes on her role as the protector of Victor's body for the rest of her life, But how that, and the solitude that comes with that duty, affected her emotionally is barely touched on as the story focuses more on her evading the Black Veil and those who would seek to harm them. And that's where Side by Side Forever comes in, to give us a sense of who Charlotte was during that time, how that affected her going towards her current life as a killer. So let's dive right in by trying to establish a time and place for the story setting. Charlotte is heading west, away from the Black Veil's temple that Victor burned down on the day he died. Already this gives us a half-decent time frame, but we can go a bit further if you remember that her weapon, the Blade of Marseille, indicates that, well, she's been to Marseille at some point. And what's to the east of Marseille? The Alps and the borders with Italy and Switzerland. In the Blight story, the Black Veil had a monastery in the mountains where Talbot was inducted to help their research. So the idea that Charlotte fled from their stronghold in the mountains has some precedence. If you're a global secret organisation with a hidden temple in the mountains where you conduct ethical experimentation, you're going to build more than one, and somewhere as isolated as the Alps would be ideal. So Charlotte left the presumably Alpine temple, went through Marseille and is now heading west. And judging by her attempts to make the coastline, she's gotten a hell of a long way. The 17th century marked the establishment of the first permanent European colonies in North America, with La Baie du Point, or which is now known as Green Bay, Wisconsin, established by Samuel de Champlain in 1634, and what we now know as Montreal was once Fort Ville-Marie, established in 1642. A lot of these colonists, like the aforementioned Champlain, left from Normandy, the northwest region of France that borders both the English Channel and the Atlantic Ocean. For those who aren't aware, that's about as far from Marseille as you can get while still being in France. So Charlotte's just walked across the entire country with her dead brother hanging out of her chest and everything either of them ever owned on her back, out of the faint hope that she might be free from the people hating them and hunting them. What an absolute stone cold fucking badass. And that's a recurring theme behind Side by Side Forever. The idea that Charlotte is chasing a dream on the other side of the world and all she wants to share it with Victor. Because to imagine the alternative, that she's on her own in her hellhole of a life, isn't worth thinking about. But Charlotte's literally sucked out of her daydream before she or the reader have time to enjoy it, as she's pulled back to earth with the realisation that she might not be alone. As Charlotte hurries off to hide, it reminds us that her life on the run is just that. Running from the Black Veil's agents on her heels and that every day is a battle for survival. She can't settle down or stay in one place for long because they'll catch her and then it's the end for both of them. And make no mistake, just because Victor's dead doesn't mean Charlotte's not fighting for his survival as much, or more, than her own. As she takes stock of what she needs from the town, something about Charlotte's connection to Victor becomes clear. She doesn't seem to fully grasp that Victor's actually dead. Too weak to move or speak, yes, but alive at least to her. And as long as she believes he's still going, she'll fight for him to the bitter end and more. Even when she's stealing from the town, medicine is the first thing she gets. She's willing to go hungry to make sure Victor gets what he needs to get better. And only when she takes the medicine he needs does she then grab food for herself. Some apples and cheese before taking a seat at a garbage fire with the town's beggars. The fire smells like, hot garbage, but at least it's somewhere Charlotte can sit for a moment and recover her strength. Well, it would be if she was anyone other than Charlotte. The villager who confronts her, making her abandon her food and medicine to escape, is a reminder of the consequences of Charlotte letting her guard down, even for just a second, as she forces her on the run once more. She kicks the garbage fire at her assailant and runs, and as the village gets further and further away, Charlotte sees a plume of black smoke in the distance. It's a really powerful but understated reminder of what Charlotte's already been through, as the survivor of not one, but 2 fatal fires that took her family from her. It's not dwelled on very much, but it's just another way this story tugs at the heartstrings in an intelligent way. Instead of bludgeoning you over the head with back-to-back tragedies like some stories I could mention, Side by Side Forever squeezes pathos out of the characters through the use of themes that recurs from their base story. The use of fire as a visual metaphor for the destruction that Charlotte and Victor's binding has caused to their lives. It took their mother's life and then it took Victor's, and no matter what they do, they will never be truly free of it. As Charlotte leaves the village, the heat of the fire gives way to a bitter cold. The only safe place for the two of them to rest is at the top of a cliff, so the villagers can't get to her. So Charlotte steels herself to make the climb and get her and Victor to safety. It's hard and she almost falls, but at the 11th hour she digs deep for the strength to protect Victor and makes the climb to the top. But it's only when she can finally rest that she realises something awful. When she was staring death in the face, a little sliver of her wanted it. And as harsh as what I'm about to say sounds, who can really blame her for that? Her life has been unimaginably difficult, harder than I or any of you watching this video can possibly understand. And after a while I can see that urge to give up being enticing on some level. And the really heartbreaking part is that Charlotte, for all her hardship and all that she's endured, blames herself for not giving more, for even thinking about giving up when she's still got a job to do. Her brother's safety remains to be her responsibility, and to even consider giving up her responsibility is, to her, unthinkable. His life, or rather her belief that he's alive, is her own lifeline, and without him there'd be nothing to stop Charlotte from ending her story once and for all. That realisation is one of the reasons I think this story is so clever, because it recontextualises the end of Charlotte's base lore story. On that last cold night, she does give up. She waits for death to take her in a moment of serenity, and it's only when the entity drags Victor back to life that she clings on and claws her own way back from the brink. That responsibility to Victor, for the first time in her life, she lets it go, setting herself free for just long enough for the entity to intervene and return her brother to her. Charlotte is effectively in a permanent stage of grief. Specifically the denial stage of grief, because she refuses to acknowledge that Victor is dead. But it's that same refusal that keeps her going. It's what gets her up in the morning and it's what keeps her awake at night. But embedded in that grief, that denial of the brutal reality of Victor's demise, is something else. Something that's bound as tightly to Charlotte's state of denial as Victor himself is to her. Hope. I don't know if you've ever lost someone close to you and been through that process of grief. I know I have. If you have, then you know what grief can do to you if you don't linger. It can tempt you to wallow in your misery, to live in denial that the person that you loved is really gone, and let your obsession with what you had distract you from what you still got. Hope can carry you through a period of grief, but it can also poison you. And one of the greatest successes of Side by Side Forever is how it explores both sides and how they affect Charlotte. Charlotte wakes up on the cliff top to see her goal in front of her. The ocean on the horizon, and the view takes her breath away. That hope of a better life for her and Victor is literally in sight. And as Charlotte shares that hope with Victor, we get what might be my favourite passage in any tome we've ever had. Everything will be alright, Victor. Just imagine the voyage with me. One day we will sail far away from here. We would sleep in a bed made of rope suspended in the air. Each rolling wave would swing our bed from side to side, lulling us to sleep. After a few weeks we'd reach land. Then we would find a little house by the creek. In the morning we would work in a field of golden crops. Each day we'd drink the sun and eat the moon. And no storm would hit us. No men would burn us. No monsters would hunt us. We would live together, free. Our lives would be so normal, you would miss our adventures. Maybe one day you'll even miss this view. I promise you, one day we will be free. We'll find a place where we belong. All three of us. It's such a powerfully bittersweet speech, born of love from one sibling to another, but it spells out what's already implied in the rest of the text. Whether she's holding on to a sheer cliff for dear life, or the memories of the loved ones she cherished, Charlotte De Haye never, ever lets go of what matters to her. Not even her mother, or the tale she told them all those years ago. Look at the language she uses. Each day we drink the sun, eat the moon. I don't mean to sound crude, but that's not exactly a business plan, is it? That's the language of a dream, of childhood wonderland the twins shared. imparted from their mother's stories and carried on beyond her like a legend. We know from their base lore that Charlotte and Victor never end up in America, and that knowledge makes this speech hurt all the more, that their story concluded with their mother's dream for them unfulfilled. Maybe that's what's caused Charlotte's hope to finally snuff out. Her realising that the stories of some faraway land where they could live in peace were just that, stories, and that all those years Charlotte had spent chasing it were wasted, pursuing fantasies in the name of a family long dead. Imagine how much that would break you. But there's something positive, something brilliant to take from this story that makes me absolutely sure this is one of the most intelligent stories Behaviour has ever put out. Yes, Charlotte's hope is ultimately harming her. It's causing her to live under the delusions that her brother and mother are still with her, preventing her from properly moving on, growing past them and becoming a more complete person by herself. What she's been through has been so heartbreaking that it's almost caused her emotional growth to freeze completely as a response to that trauma, clinging on to fantasies and childhood dreams because she literally has nothing else to live for except the hope that things are better than they appear. That hope is beyond reasonable. She's literally living on a prayer. Her hope is so disparate from reality that it was only a matter of time before something snapped. You know what else that hope is? In hindsight, absolutely 100% accurate and completely justified. Charlotte's delusions that Victor is still here and will come back to her eventually in his entirety were, by some dark miracle, actually true in the end. Because remember, Victor did come back. The entity raised him from the dead so him and Charlotte could be killers. And that wouldn't have been possible without Charlotte taking such good care of him, keeping the faith that he'd come back to her. If she'd have let herself die and given up her ability to protect him, or had him cut away after his death, he'd never have come back and Victor would be lost forever. But it was that connection, that bond between brother and sister, that kept Charlotte alive long enough to grow into the woman she needed to be, for the entity to scoop them up and give the two of them purpose again. And it really is him too. That little sign of them holding hands when Charlotte needs attention, that's still there. It's still there. It's still Victor. It was the entity that breathed life back into Victor, but it was his sister's love that saved him. In a world of unspeakable horrors, heartbreaking loss, and terrors beyond our dimension, Charlotte and Victor were saved by the power of love. And it works because the story doesn't bludgeon you over the head with it, like an episode of children's television. Because love isn't all smiling and blue skies, it's not as pretty as that. It's also disappointment and bitterness and big snotty tears because you don't think anything could ever hurt this much. And the only thing you can think to get you on your feet again is the hope that it might get better. It strangles us, it kills us. And it's beautiful. And that's what this story is. It's beautiful. Side by Side Forever, more than any other story in Dead by Daylight, understands its characters and the relationships that define them, and uses it to craft a story for Charlotte and Victor that feels utterly organic to their source material, while making us view that source material in a whole different light. Rather than showing us new events and trying to make us struggle with side characters and shaggy dog stories designed to get the twins to their end destination, Side by Side Forever decides to focus on who they are and how the lives they've led affected them. It's what makes the twins tick as characters. It's why, despite everything people don't like about the twins, their lore is one of the few things almost everybody I've spoken to agrees is good about them. And more than anything else, this story feels like my reward. And I know that sounds egotistical as fuck, but it really does. My relationship with Dead by Daylight as a means of conveying story is an odd one, in large part because I acknowledge how half-baked a lot of DBD story content can be. In the last few months, we've had a licensed character assassination on a level we've never seen before, we've had one of the most tastelessly tone-deaf story DBDs ever harboured, who came with a killer who, despite being meticulously researched and having a gorgeously interesting concept, failed to properly deliver on that concept. And as a Twins enjoyer, my relationship with DBD as a game has been pretty rocky too. Like, I'll be real with you, the experience of playing the twins in the past year has gradually gotten worse and worse, to the point that the idea of a rework now seems enticing to me, despite the notion terrifying me when I first heard about it. Between new bugs, new metas, and some of the most bizarre balance decisions in a very long time, the twins have a reputation for being a truly unloved killer, both by the community and by the game's own developers. But this story, as much as it only really matters to a pretty small group of people, means the world to me. As someone who this community associates very closely both with the twins and with DBD's lore content, it feels like this story was stamped and addressed with my name. And for the first time in a very, very long time, it feels like what I wanted has been seen and understood. So I know people at Behaviour watch my videos from time to time. If any of you know who wrote this story, get them a coffee or a bar of chocolate or something, because they have damn well earned it. And if you're watching this, thanks for putting up with my ramblings for this section, because I know it's very self-indulgent and a bit egotistical, and I am sorry, but just this once, I'm going to take this W for myself. I hope you understand. I'm going to take this W for myself. I'm going to take this W for myself. I'm going to take this W for W.
No, wait, this can't be right. No, not you. Not anyone but you. Please. Please, no.
Global saturation.
Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this one. I hope it was as enjoyable and informative for you as it was fun for me to make. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely off the fucking chain, because there's a ton of stuff that got announced in the anniversary update that I'd like to cover in videos very, very soon. And Evil Dead the game hasn't long come out, a game which I've been absolutely enamoured by and would love to make at least one video on, so keep your eyes open for those. To make sure you don't miss them, I'd recommend subscribing if you haven't already, like the video if you enjoyed it, and check the link in the description for all my socials, including my Twitter, my Twitch, my Discord server, and my Patreon and Ko-fi links if this content deserves your money. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.